Hey, Tom Whitman here again. Today we're going to discuss how to put an incentive in place for your frontline managers. About this time of year, I get a lot of phone calls from a lot of companies asking me a very simple question. How can I safely put an incentive in place for my sales manager, production manager, installation manager, that the managers, frontline people that really manage gross margin dollars? How do I put something in place that's going to be trackable and reasonable? Well, it's really not difficult. The real question is, how can they earn that incentive? I believe the best incentive that I've ever seen on a monthly basis is that when you get to the point departmentally, if you can establish break even and what it takes, how much money it's going to, how much volume it's going to take to drop a 10, 15, 20, 25% net profit by department, then if you're able to track that, you can very precisely be safe both ways when you're working with your service, production, sales, or whatever frontline management you want. You could even involve, customer service reps and office managers as well. But it's based on performance. It's purely based on performance and not just attendance and tenure. And it's a performance-based pay plan above what they're typically making. Let me show you an example of how to figure that out. So first of all, by this point, you should be covering your cash spread. Make sure you're positive. We want 3 to 6 months, right, in the bank. Make sure that's set, and then go to the next step. The next step is knowing the break even for your company. Are you surpassing that every month and you're profitable every month? Next step, break it down departmentally. Now you've already broken it down departmentally. You have these discussions with your frontline managers, and they clearly understand the business side of the business and surpassing that. Now, once you have all that in place, first, it's very easy to go to the next step. So let's go to the whiteboard and check it out real quick, and I'll give you a couple of examples, okay? Quick recap. So let's say, for example, by the numbers that it's the service department. I'm just going to take an example of the service department. Now, let's suppose that for the service department, their allocated overhead per month is $35,000. And their gross margin target is 60%. By the way, overhead gross margin dollars is 60%. By the way, it's likely that service departments gross margins are going to be significantly higher than most of the other departments, mainly because there's more transactions per day. And the more the transactions per day, the more overhead is necessary to route those vehicles to the right place with the right parts at the right time. So just a heads up. That's why the other steps are critically important before we get this step, right? So this, having said, we know the math right now. So for this organization, if I take my overhead of $35,000 divided by 0.6 equals 58 break even is $58,400, okay? Based on the basic math. Now we want a 10%, 15%, and 20% net profit, right? We'll get 20% during demand. And we'll set a target for 15 during the shoulder months and 10% through the slowest months. We'll talk about the strategy later in a different segment. So that being said, if I took, my $35,000 divided by and 60, I'm going to take 10% away from that, 0.5. Okay, that's $70,000 required to make 10%. To make it 15%, let's go to 35,000 divided by, let me see, it's 10, 30.25 equals, is that right? Hang on just a second here, folks. 35,000 divided by 60, that's 45.45 equals $77,000. Okay, to make it 20%, it's going to be 35,000 divided by 65.4 equals $87,500. So here's the deal. Check it out. If my service department, my service manager, it's week 3 and we're anticipating a 10% month and they bring in a 15% month, yeah, you can use the extra 5 as something you have enough overachieving, right, of roughly 5% that you can do something with. Now understand there's fixed overhead and there's variable overhead. So once that happens, you know, there's going to be some overtime. There may be a few things there, but take that into consideration. But the bottom line is, if we've surpassed this 10% at some point, you can share some of the, I'm sorry, when it comes to here, right? Then you can start to share some of this if you choose as a bonus. And if you have a 15% month, 15% is the minimum, anything above that, you're going to have to evidence that by the profit and loss statement, obviously. But what's over above 15% may be shareable as a bonus, and then demand at 20%. This is probably the safest, most accurate and fair way to put an incentive out there for frontline managers, because it sticks to the facts, and the facts, you know, the numbers are the numbers. So, and that's usually what I advise, how to put that in place. It's pretty straightforward. Don't overcomplicate it. We don't want any funny money or anything like that. Keep it very simple. But when your frontline managers understand clearly the math, and they understand how to determine the break even for the company, the gross margin percentage that is necessary to get past break even, and if they're on the mark and tracking it every day as they should be, by all means, this is the fairest way to compensate. I'm going to warn you, do not put this in place until you know your cash spread and it's under control. Number one. Number two, you know where your break even for the entire company is, and you're able to consistently surpass that. Number three, your frontline managers clearly understand how to establish a break even for their company. They are allocated a certain amount of overhead, and they know what that is to overcome under the day, and they're performing right now with profitable months. If none of those things are put in place right now, we have some work to do to get you to the point to where you can do that. Okay. A little bit of heavy lifting on the front end is going to avoid a lot of heartache on the back end. If you need any help with that, give me a call. It'd be my pleasure to help. So until next time, God bless, take care, and see you on the other side of break even.